Ozarks are not just known for the forested mountains here, but also for the extensive rivers and waterways that flow throughout them. Water defines the landscape and brings life to the habitats. Water even forms the boundaries to the Ozarks, with major rivers like the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Grand River creating borders for this unique area. One of the reasons the Ozarks are so unique and full of water is from its karst landscape. This means that under the ground, there are sediment layers of dolomite, limestone, sandstone, and shale. These types of rocks are porous, with tiny holes in them, which are easily eroded by water. As water wears away the rock, underground streams and rivers are formed. These waterways create passages that can become caves or sinkholes. The karst landscape here has formed many caves and underground passages in the Ozarks from the types of rock beneath us, combined with the power of erosion from water. And above the ground, water has carved out beautiful valleys with flowing streams and rivers that create riparian habitat zones along the water's edge. All this water, surrounded by lush forest, means that lots of wildlife can live here. The Ozarks aren't as high and epic as the Rockies, or as extensive and tall as the Appalachians, but they are a beautiful mountainous area in between. In the Ozarks, it's not as much about looking up at the mountains, but down in the hollows, in the valleys and the waterways, which is where our journey begins today. People often use stream and river interchangeably, like they are the same thing, but there are some important differences. Streams are often fast-moving channels of water that flow downhill from natural springs, rainwater, and melting snow. Mountains have streams that bring water down to the valleys. When two streams join together, the smaller one is called a tributary. When many streams meet at lower elevations to form a large channel of flowing water, that is called a river. Rivers are wider, deeper, and usually not as fast-flowing as streams, and all rivers eventually flow out into the ocean. The anatomy of streams and rivers are the same. The current is the flow or the speed of the water. The bottom of a river or stream is called a bed, and the sides are called banks. Here in the Ozarks, the streams have rocky bottoms and often steep banks from the erosion. Because these waters are fed by natural springs, they are fast-flowing, clear, and cold. All these elements mean that the water has more oxygen, which can be very important to certain water-dwelling creatures, like the largest amphibian in North America, the Hellbender salamander. There are two subspecies of Hellbender salamanders: the Ozark Hellbender, which lives only in the Ozarks of Missouri and Arkansas, and the Eastern Hellbender, which is far more widespread and is found throughout the Appalachian region and the Midwest. The Ozarks of Missouri are the only place where both subspecies are found. They can get pretty big, reaching almost 2 feet long and weighing around 3 pounds. This makes them the third largest amphibian in the world. Hellbenders are members of the giant water salamander kind. Other members of this kind get even bigger, like the Japanese giant salamanders and the Chinese giant salamanders in Asia that can grow up to 5 feet. Hellbenders have incredible camouflage, are nocturnal, and hide under rocks on stream beds during the day, so very few people get a chance to see them. So we're going to get an up-close look at their life cycle by checking out the conservation work that's being done right here at the St. Louis Zoo. It all began with biologists collecting their eggs out in the wild along stream beds. Back at the zoo, they built 1 indoor stream and 2 outdoor streams to mimic conditions in the wild for breeding. After the eggs hatch, Hellbender larvae have gills on either side of their head. But by the time they're about 2 years old and about 4 or 5 inches long, their gills disappear and they start breathing entirely through their skin. Their Latin name was inspired by this and means hidden gills. Adult hellbenders do have lungs that they can use, but they are usually just used for controlling their ability to float instead of for breathing. They only use their lungs to get oxygen from the air if they can't get enough from the water around them through their skin. If the water is too muddy or still, the hellbender will have trouble breathing. The zoo raises them for about 4 to 6 years in the safety and care of captivity before releasing them back out into the wild. Each young hellbender is returned to the exact river where its eggs were collected. Some are also successfully bred in captivity now, But that took years of hard conservation work before that was finally achieved. Today, the St. Louis Zoo has anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 hellbenders in different stages of development in preparation for release back out into the wild. So today, we get to go with Jeff Brigler, the state herpetologist for the Missouri Department of Conservation, to release some young hellbenders back out into the wild. So Jeff, how long have you been doing hellbender conservation?
It's been 23 years now, and my first hellbender I caught was in the summer of 2000.
How many hellbenders have you released back into the Ozark habitats?
Well, so far we've released about 11,000 hellbenders, and this last summer we reached a milestone. We released the 10,000th hellbender in this exact river we're standing today.
Wow, that is really cool. That's a big accomplishment.
Yes, it is, and it was a big deal for us, a huge milestone, and hopefully we'll reach the 20,000 mark soon.
So Jeff, how are these creatures designed for life in the Ozark waterways?
Well, this animal's totally adapted to the river conditions. You can see how streamlined its body is, so it can easily walk up and down into the flow of the river. And look at that flat pancake head. So they like to hide under rocks, very tight-fitting rocks that are very dark. They can take that small head and just nudge it into a hole. If they can get that head into that hole, they can fit the rest of their bodies inside of that crevice. And they have that nice rudder-like tail if they want to swim, but most of the time they like to just creep and crawl along the bottom of the river.
Hellbenders have flat, slimy bodies. The slime is not poisonous, but it does make them slippery and much harder for predators to catch them. This slimy appearance has even earned them the nickname snot otters. With their flat heads and bodies and paddle-like tails, hellbenders will squeeze under rocks or boulders underwater. This provides them year-round shelter, as well as a way to stay still in the fast-moving water. Their short arms and legs are actually very muscular. While they can swim, they usually walk along the bottom of the stream. The tough pads on their toes give them extra traction as they travel the slippery stream bottoms, but they don't like moving around very often. When they find a favorite spot, they tend to spend the majority of their time there. In fact, they will sit in the exact same position for days, hiding themselves until their favorite meal swims by. Hellbenders are nocturnal, meaning they're mostly active at night, which is when they hunt. They love crayfish, but they'll also eat fish, insects, and tadpoles. Now, their mouths are so large that an adult hellbender can eat an animal almost as big as itself. Hellbenders have tiny eyes on top of their heads. While they don't have great eyesight, hellbenders do have a special ability to detect light. God created them to have light-sensitive cells all over their bodies, especially on their tails, to help them fully hide themselves. If any part of them is showing in the sunlight, they'll know it. When hunting, they rely mostly on their keen sense of smell and their lateral line along their body that helps them detect vibrations, pressure differences, and movements in the water around them. Hellbenders are aquatic, living completely in the water all the time, and they prefer cold, fast-flowing rivers and streams like this one here. Now, the reason for this is because colder temperatures and faster-flowing waterways produce more available dissolved oxygen in the water. And since adult hellbenders breathe through their skin and not their lungs, they can absorb the oxygen that's around them. That's why they are so wrinkly. All those folds of skin provide more surface area for the hellbender to absorb more oxygen from the water. Their wrinkly skin has tons of tiny pores all over that can absorb oxygen right into their blood vessels. Compared to most other salamanders, hellbenders are slow-growing and long-lived, sometimes reaching about 30 years old or longer in captivity. But due to habitat loss and other factors like pollution and overharvesting these creatures, there has been a drastic decline in hellbender population. It's estimated between 70 and 80% of the hellbender population in Missouri has disappeared in recent decades. In 2011, the Ozark Hellbender was placed on the federal endangered species list. The eastern hellbender is listed as federally endangered in Missouri and is considered near threatened in the rest of its range. Hellbenders are sensitive to their environment, which means they can be good indicators to the health of the water and the habitats that's around them. That's why studying them and working to increase their numbers is so important. Conservation is part of our job as being good stewards of creation. So if you see one in the wild, it's best to just observe it, appreciate it, and let it swim free back into nature where it's designed to be.